Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of College Financial Preps Preparing for College podcast. Today we have with us Cindy Thackston. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And today's is a topic that we don't really discuss often enough. It's getting into the emotions and what's going on with our kids as they're preparing for college, getting beneath the surface. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do, Cindy.
So I am a life coach for teens and suddenly young adults. It just evolved that way. And I also have three teens slash young adults myself, freshman, a sophomore, and a junior in college this upcoming fall. I've been through it all and been walking the walk and navigating all of these challenges and all of the different, obstacles that our kids are facing in their generation. I felt like as I'm doing this and making this my full-time job for my three, let me just turn this into my life's purpose and package it in a way that I can help other families too, because the things that I had discovered in the process were just not written in any books anywhere. I felt like this is my way to give back.
Fabulous. Glad that you're here. Let's dive in. What's the most important tip? What do you hope or do with even your own kids?
I think what I have come to realize with my own kids through all of the stress and panic and expectations that society has placed on us to get our kids ready for college and to put our kids on the path to success, that seems to start off so young, like from the moment they're in kindergarten or first grade, all these milestones, reading, writing, math. Come on, they were doing their math facts. It was just this constant path and process that just never had an end. And it was always focused on getting into college, having good grades so they can get into college, so they can get jobs, could not live in my basement, all of those things. But I learned early on that even with my own three kids, having three different personalities and different neurodiversities, maybe ASD on the spectrum, maybe ADHD, I have different things going on, that they would respond in different ways to expectations and school and teachers and workloads and stress. I think the big headline for me became to focus more on the child in front of you and how they're responding to it than the process that the school or society puts out in front of you. That became my work, was just focusing on them, and their emotions ultimately tell a story about what's going on underneath. Maybe things that they don't even realize that they can't articulate. Just looking at their behaviors as cues for where they are. Focus.
For parents who are in the thick of preparing for college now, what are some of those cues that they should be looking out for, that maybe there is some underlying stress going on for our kids?
But in the past 6 years, what I have seen, I usually get a phone call sometime around sophomore, junior year of high school. And it's kind of like worried about their kid not being ready for college or being on the right track for college. That could look like either one, they're just not interested, they're not taking any action, they're not participating in the process, they're like not doing their essay, they haven't handed in the assignments for the college prep, they haven't doing AP, or they're not doing well in AP. Other one is just that my kid is so stressed out, or just perfectionism, and they just don't stop, and they're so worried, and they're always frantic, and they're just going to drive themselves crazy, and I'm not doing it. You're doing it to themselves. I'm not putting this pressure on them. The opposite extreme. And then the third one is just like complete self-sabotage, just like what we call soiling the nest, right? Just doing wild and crazy things, just completely failing, being A students their whole lives. They know that they're super smart, but all of a sudden they're not handing in assignments, they're getting Fs, they're just giving up. Those would be three of the different types of behaviors that would kind of show up and make parents question their college readiness.
And what do you say to parents and to kids? And what's the process of helping them all through?
The process is really to look at, like, to take your own panic out of it. And I think sometimes all these behaviors and actions that we see in our own kids are signs of unmet human needs, right? So the human needs, which I won't go totally into, but one of the biggest ones is like certainty. We have a need for certainty, and kids want to know what's going to happen. In their whole lives, they've had us to count on, and they've had a lot of support perhaps in school, and they've had maybe 504s or IEPs or just containers where they feel safe and people guiding them. And we as parents might be doing a lot for them because we feel bad for how much they have on their plates and we want to make it easier for them. And just this realization that they're going to have to do all of this by themselves could kind of show up in unconsciously creating these limits for themselves where they are shutting down. And that is actually like a stress response. All of these behaviors are different ways that they respond to stress, coping mechanisms. Just understanding how the body and mind work together, right? The fight, flight, freeze, if you've ever heard of that as a stress response. Depending on the situation, if a person feels threatened, their body's going to take action and throw them into fight, flight, or freeze. You might have a kid who is going to be that stressed out kid who's overachieving, oversensitive, overreactive to everything. That's the fight response. They're not even trying to be difficult. They don't even realize what's taking over them, but they are just responding through their body. Their body is in a state of fight. But another child's personality might be flight, procrastination, overwhelm, avoiding responsibilities, just I'll do it later, right? And that is not intentional. It is how they respond to the stress and overwhelm. Like they actually can't take action because they're not even having access to their smart mind, to their logic. They're cutting down. We see this and then we pile on and we're like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? You better do this. You're never going to get into college. We take our stress and our fight response kicks in. Now we're compounding it. And it's really just pushing them further and further and further away. We want to just guess what we're seeing, the behavior that we're seeing, and then just ask ourselves some questions, some important questions like, well, what have I been doing that might be triggering this response? And have I actually even had a conversation with my child about how they're feeling about all of this, how ready they feel, seeing them as young adults that they are becoming. And instead of just dictating the path or what they have to do or the responsibilities or putting all of the parent stress, like the money and the this and the that and the scholarships, like take all of that out of the picture for a minute and just look at your kid and just assess them and have a conversation with them about how they're feeling about college.
Just because you brought it up a couple of times, this isn't solely for students mentioned that have different potential diagnoses or IEPs or 504s. This is for all of our kids, right?
All of our kids. It's a very stressful time, especially coming out of COVID. I think that some parents, we've bounced back. We think it's over and we're relieved, but we have decades more of experience and evidence that and resilience that we can draw on to take ourselves post-COVID. We're okay now. But we don't realize that it was a large percentage of our young kids' lives, right? 2 years, 2.5 years, that's a huge percentage of their lives. Whatever grade they were in when that happened, it left a mark. And it might have set them back in social development, confidence, how they feel about themselves, even academics. Some kids that I work with are responding still to work, like they just can't do the work. It's too much. It's too overwhelming. It's triggering almost like a PTSD from the COVID in the screen, doing all that work, all work, no play for that long period of time is for everybody. And if you put a neurodiversity on top of it, then we have to really consider what that's like for them and sort through all of it and put ourselves in their shoes and be really compassionate, I think, and empathetic and just not make any assumptions about where they are emotionally through this process.
I'm going to say this just because you started to bring it up, started to mention the scholarships and the finances and the whole paying for college piece about it. And just because basically the work that I do, what I always recommend to parents is that with difficulties in talking about your personal finances, speak to me, another grown-up, not necessarily the children. But as far as the children go, if there is a budget, I always recommend communicate that early on. Certainly at a not a stressful time, but shared goals. That way you're all working towards the same thing.
Love that. And I think that's great advice. It's also, it goes right along the lines of shifting relationship from authoritative parent who's telling everybody what to do and dictating everything to more like a mentorship where we're having honest adult-like conversations but without making them, not making our financial burdens their responsibility. We don't want them to feel guilty, right? But we do want to be honest, and we want to not be afraid to put some boundaries in place. If we can't afford an Ivy League school, then we really shouldn't be gearing them towards that. But if they are thinking, well, oh my gosh, I have to get in and I have to be smart enough because I have to get a scholarship for this school, or my parents will be disappointed, or sometimes they've been listening that we don't realize our kids, the belief system is set between ages 0 and 7. All of the little things that you're hearing when we're very, very, very young about college or invitations, or about other people being smart, or other person's kids getting into Ivy League schools, or other person's hats, like it's just like little seeds that are being planted, and the belief system is being cast. And then from that point forward, we're just collecting evidence. Ages 8 to 14, they're collecting more evidence that these beliefs are true. And they're just like, it's building, right? It's hard when you're now a junior in high school for a parent to say, it's okay, you don't have to get into college. Like, you don't even have to go to college if you don't want. I understand, like, whatever you want. And they're like, no, wait, for 14 years I've been hearing I'm going to college and I have to get a scholarship, right? So you can't just lace all of that with one sentence. They're not going to believe it because it's actually become their blueprint. That's where the pressure comes from. Does that make sense?
No, I'm interpreting it because I have a 14-year-old. So I'm wondering what comes next. What are tips that you can offer for parents?
I think the biggest tip is really just to take a step back, just pause for a minute. Maybe after you listen to this podcast, just sit down with a cup of coffee or tea and a journal and just reflect on, messages have I been sending to my kid over the years? What might they be interpreting? What pressures might they be putting on themselves? Have I actually had a conversation with them about what's going on? Honest conversation about how they're feeling about the whole thing. Maybe where they're nervous, right? Just an honest conversation with them about what they want, what they're afraid of, what they need to feel ready for school, and maybe what support can I provide for you if any of these comes up. Let them start to take over and be the driver and get used to asking for help and get used to having real conversations. That would be the biggest tip. And then the other thing is to just start looking less at their resume and more at their emotional side. How are they? How confident are they? How articulate are they? Do they advocate for themselves? Are they able to speak up? Are they assertive enough to get what they want and get what they need? Are they social? Are they comfortable socially? Can they go out and make friends? Or do you think they're going to hide in their room because they're having panic attacks because they've been riddled with anxiety for the last 3 years, right? We want to really just look at the whole person. I think you've heard that term before, but look at the whole student and just really make an assessment and just start seeing where there are gaps that we can help them fill in, and ask them if they want support, ask them if they want a coach, ask them what they feel like they need to feel confident going into college.
Say there is that child and there are those gaps. What would a session look like? Like, how do you work with a teen to help them where they need to be?
I have a program that I had done that I'm constantly revising, but Success for College Bound Teens. And it's like a 6-week program where I'm taking them through more of the social emotional part, like helping them draw a line in the sand of what got you to here from K to 12 or whatever grade they're in. And now let's look forward over the next 5 years and just to start to see themselves as a new version of themselves and leave the teenage version of themselves and those behaviors and those reactions and experiences, leave it behind and understand that it served them up to a point, but it's not really going to take them to the next place. Letting them build their own confidence and understanding that judgment and all the things that they were afraid of, the terrible times in high school that you have to go through socially, it's all changing now, and you get to have a clean slate and just allowing them to create more of a positive vision instead of a fearful vision of what it's going to look like, to see themselves as taking an active role in the next 4 years of their lives and get excited about it, something to look forward to and get excited about, and then giving them so many tools to be able to be social, to be able to make friends, to be able to feel more confident about themselves, just walking away with this toolbox of things that they can use over and over and over again, will help them move into that next phase of their lives. It's like a 6-week program that I have. And then there's an app that I use for in between. So the first semester of college, they can still reach me on this app for support, and I can give them the tool that they need at the time. They can tell me what's going on, and we can just be going back and forth on this messaging app to just support them.
What do you normally see? Tell us the typical journey of the students that you're working with.
Typical journey, I would say, is just don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves. They're getting overwhelmed. And it could look like procrastination, a lot of procrastination, ADHD, just not being able to break things down into smaller pieces, just avoiding it completely, waiting till the last minute, not being able to get college level work done in the last minute, like they might have in high school, right? Not having teachers who are having a personal relationship with them and giving them a second chance or an extra day. Like they're just one of many. Like it's just a completely different environment, like a reality check, like, whoa, this isn't working. And I don't feel like I have the tools. That's when I work with a kid who's gone to college without being prepared. When I work with students who aren't in college yet, I think they get excited about it because they start to see themselves in a different way, and they're walking in feeling more confident and more comfortable with their next phase, because they're really drawing a line in the sand and they're leaving a part of themselves behind, right? And evolving. That's kind of what I see. We go from being proactive to being completely in a panic and heading towards a crisis and not wanting to get help at school because they feel embarrassed. Parents coming to me to just have them have their own support system outside of the college counseling department.
Right. We're working with both the high school students and the college students.
I even work with med students, believe it or not, who have such severe test anxiety that they're having trouble passing their exams.
Oh.
That's an example of, if you had test anxiety in high school and you were great at everything, but you just kept bombing your tests, or super smart and you have a great GPA, but then you fail the SAT, ACT a million times, you start to develop this fear of taking tests, right? Because you're being measured and it puts so much pressure. You get all in their heads, but like we work on tools of how to reverse that and to take the test in a different way that allows your body to be in a calm and restful state, to have access to all the information that you studied. Because if they're panicking in the middle of a test, the brain turns off and they can't access all the information that they studied. And that's why an hour later, oh, I knew that. Why didn't I put that? It's because you were in a state of fight flight. So your brain turned off. And when they understand the science behind how their brain is working, it lets them think there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body and brain are actually working together to protect you. And that's a good sign. It works.
This is fabulous. Fascinating topic. Do me a favor. If people want to be in touch with you, can you share where people can find you?
Yes, thank you. Well, right now, I think I left an email in the show notes. They can email me at my name, cathackston@gmail.com. I also have social media, coach.cindy.thackston on Instagram, or on Facebook, Cindy Thackston. You can message me on any of my social media platforms.
Thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. I love your work.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching today's episode of College Financial Preps Preparing for College podcast. Take care.